Clark Butler was a man of courage. The courage to do the right thing. His life journey was not an easy one, yet he was able to be sensitive while remaining strong. He was a brilliant man of vision and integrity who cared deeply about his family and community. He sought to make a difference through his business, public service, and philanthropy. This was evident since the day he was born. Clark was born in Horseshoe, Florida, March 2, 1919. His grandfather and great-grandfather were the first settlers in 1848. They came down from the Carolinas no longer satisfied with what they were doing, so they came to Florida searching for a new frontier. As such, they experienced primitive conditions. Through self-determination and hard work, they survived and made a home. When Clark was 1 year old, his father, Edward, moved the family to Plant City to start a farm with strawberries as the main crop. The schools there were called strawberry schools as they were closed during the crop-picking season, which meant that they were open during the heat of summer in order to complete the necessary days of school. Edward Butler knew Hillsborough was more prosperous than Dixie County and offered better schools. Clark was one of 5 children, having 1 sister and 3 brothers. Clark was part of what Tom Brokaw referred to as the greatest generation, people that were coming out of the fields and out of poverty, who made their way by pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. Clark was 10 years old when the Depression hit and remembers his father going to town with $7 in his pocket to draw money from the bank. When Edward got to the bank, there was a sign declaring the bank was closed. The family was a close-knit one and stuck together, making it through hard times. Because Clark was one of the hardest working members of that generation, he was destined to make something out of his life for both family and the community in which he lived. In high school, there were free lunches available for needy children. But Clark went down the street and worked in a general store for an hour in exchange for a bologna sandwich and a cold cola, so as not to take the free lunches from the kids that really needed them. His roots were very important to him. In fact, his graduating class from Turkey Creek High School in Plant City still have reunions with approximately 20 to 30 of the students of the class attending, even as they approach 90 years of age. The young teacher at Turkey Creek, Chester Yates, taught Clark a valuable lesson, having told him, "If you're not successful in an endeavor, after a year or two, it's time to move on." Chester's words made an impression on Clark, and at this time, Clark worked weekends at a fresh produce market in Tampa. While visiting his brother Bob on a trip to Gainesville, he noticed that the produce markets were inferior to what he knew of Tampa, and he saw an opportunity. As the youngest child at home, he convinced his parents and his older brother Bill that they would move to Gainesville and start a new life. Understand that Clark's parents were in their 70s at the time. By the spring of 1939, the family had saved up $300, sold the mule, loaded up their 1930 Model A truck, and moved to Gainesville. Here, they rented a house in a black neighborhood for $30 a month. Their next-door neighbor were Charles Chestnut's grandparents. And down the street, Clark found a lot perfect for a produce stand on Northwest 8th Avenue and Northwest 4th Street. He rented it for $8 a month from an African-American woman named Annie Edwards. The family worked 7 days a week to sustain the produce stand. Unlike their peers, they did business with both blacks and whites during a time of segregation. There were many times when Clark remarked, "Had it not been for the black community, we wouldn't have survived." Each morning at 2 o'clock, Clark and his brother would drive the truck to Jacksonville to buy fresh produce from the Setzer family warehouse. They would then drive back and sell produce from the stand. They were open 7 days a week and gave curb service to the ladies so that they wouldn't have to get out of their car when they drove up to buy the produce. During this time, area college students lived in boarding houses as there were no apartments or dorms like today. So, ever the entrepreneur, 19-year-old Clark would drive to the back door of each boarding house and sold the fresh produce he had trucked to Gainesville. In the 1940s, the produce stand was added on to 3 separate times to create a 14,000 square foot grocery store. When he started the endeavor, he was trying to do it by himself. One afternoon, Woodrow Bratcher was driving by and saw Clark attempting to construct the store by himself. Woodrow drove up and said, "Mr. Butler, looks like you could use some help." That began a relationship that would last over 30 years. Woodrow would be instrumental in Clark's later development companies as a supervisor of his housing and apartment projects. This became the first modern grocery store in Gainesville and was never closed even for one day during the expansion. Clark was a natural-born promoter and marketer. He would celebrate store anniversaries with a 1,500-pound cake, gave away appliances, had loss leader advertisements, had his own radio show, and was the first to do a full-page front and back ad in the newspaper. He featured quick and courteous checkout service and improved shopper convenience.
Would you like to swing on a star?
After the war, Clark met Mary Catherine Veach, and it was love at first sight for both of them. Besides her movie star good looks, he could identify with Mary Catherine as she was a person of conviction like him. Strong and ambitious, and intelligent with a delightful sense of humor, Clark saw a lot of himself in his future bride. He needed someone by his side that wasn't afraid of hard work, enormous risk, and sacrifice. She had also come through a life of poverty. She, too, worked throughout junior high school and high school to help her family have enough money to make ends meet. She worked at Rutherford's Jewelers on the downtown square on University Avenue when she was in high school. She then became an operator at the phone company, moving her way up to a supervisor's position. When Mary Catherine and Clark got married, Mary Catherine had all the money as she saved every dime that she could and bought war bonds to protect her savings. She didn't as much as splurge on a Coca-Cola because that was money that could be put to better use. All total, she had $5,000 saved when they got married in 1946, which was unheard of at the time. Given his love of the outdoors and fishing, the two honeymooned in Horseshoe, Florida. Her savings made the down payment on a house and allowed them to purchase a car and furniture and helped build the business. Rather than Clark splurging on a diamond engagement ring, she insisted he put those funds back into the business. He would later joke that there was no way Mary Catherine loved him for his money or his social standing, as he had none at that time. He admired her elegance, her dignity, and her thrift. Clark was destined for public service. His father was county commissioner in Mayo. His grandfather, James D. Butler, is pictured here with President Taft in the Rose Room at the White House in 1913. With Mary Catherine's support, Clark rose in prominence for his business acumen and was asked by a group of men in the business community to run for city commission. In 1952, at age 31, he agreed to this call even though he had never been to a commission meeting. T. Allen Crouch, a Gainesville attorney, was one of the group that asked him to run for office. Mr. Crouch said he didn't play politics and he didn't favor insiders. He opened city government to the public so that each citizen could be involved. The first thing Clark noticed as a city commissioner was that city contracts were not put out to bid, but rather were being offered through a good old boy system. Clark felt that if his business put purchasing out to a competitive bid, why shouldn't the same advantage exist for the taxpayer? Each week on Thursday, Clark would stock the grocery to the gills for the weekend business. One Thursday night, he got a call at home and was told that the grocery store had caught fire. The store's tin roof had had a hole cut into it, and someone had intentionally started the fire. This happened within days after the vote had been taken to end bidding corruption. It was arson. Ironically, his insurance agent, Howard Hall, visited the store the day before the fire and recommended that Clark increase his building insurance to $400,000 from the current $40,000. Clark's response? Nope, I can't afford it. With the grocery store burned down, he and Mary Catherine had to start all over again. Clark had lost 20 pounds in the ensuing months. During this time, a large Florida utility wanted to buy Gainesville Regional Utilities, or GRU, for $5 million while Clark was a commissioner. The pressure was on to sell, and one of the commissioners stepped down as a result of this pressure. Clark said that a short-term gain of $5 million didn't make sense, and it paled in comparison to the long-term advantage of keeping GRU as an independent utility. Clark believed that in government you work for the people, the taxpayer. That was how he approached his community service. About a week after the store burned, he was approached by the same Florida utility to discuss the matter further. Clark tells a story in his own words about how he stuck to his principles and saved GRU.
And the other commissioners were being pursued by one of the big power companies to sell the Gainesville power plant, which was made electricity for the city of Gainesville and helped to carry it through. It was very financially beneficial to the strength of the city of Gainesville. And they had offered us, they had been meeting with me before this and the others, and I kept telling them I wasn't interested. And so after the store burned, about a week, he called me again, and he said, "Mr. Butler, could I meet with you?" I said, "I'm not in the mood to meet with anybody right now." He said, "Well, please let me meet with you, and let me tell you what I think we can do to help you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, let me meet you." And so I met him down at the old store site. We were cleaning it up. And he said, "Mr. Butler, we have a lot of friends in the business, and we know a lot of people maybe could help you since you have not been able to get loans to build these store back." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "We could put you with some people that good friends of ours maybe would help you with the store." And I said, "Then what would you expect? When it come before the vote of the commission, would you expect for me to vote to sell the power plant?" "Well," he said, "we're going to work together, and we're friends." I said, "Just don't bother me. I don't want you to bother me anymore. I'm not interested." So that was the end of that. People say, "Well, why didn't you take him up on it? You could have got back in the grocery business." I said, "I'd have had to compromise to do it, and I wouldn't do it." And that was the best decision I ever made.
Clark didn't compromise his principles. GRU now makes an annual contribution of $20 million to the Gainesville General Fund. At the time, the infrastructure of Gainesville was growing, and there was a desire to extend Main Street to 16th Avenue, beyond 8th Avenue where it stopped at the time. Setzer Grocers was considering moving to Gainesville and said that if the city would extend its boundaries, they would purchase a lot on which to build. If the Main Street was not extended, they would purchase the property where Clark's grocery store had previously been. Clark was in position to make considerably more money by voting against the extension and selling his property to the Setzer family. Due to the fire, this was a time when he desperately needed the money. Instead, he voted to extend Main Street because it was the right thing to do. Mr. Setzer sought him out later to shake his hand for his integrity and for his ultimately doing the right thing. Doing the right thing always paid off for Clark Butler. A couple of years later, he traded the former produce lot on 8th Avenue for 5 acres of land on Southwest 13th Street, where Lakeshore Tower stands today. Clark built the towers and sold the out parcel in front for $45,000, which was the amount Mr. Setzer would pay him for the 8th Avenue lot. Honesty pays. Prior to Gainesville's current mayor, Pegeen Hanrahan, Clark was the youngest mayor of Gainesville. Clark was never passive. He would hit the ground running, and with an incredible business mind would start making decisions for the good of both local business and the community's interest at large. For example, he found that the man in charge of Gainesville's utilities wasn't the most reliable of employees. Rather, his assistant, John Kelly, was the person that was really running the utility. Clark realized that the public would save money by releasing the head of the operation and promoting the assistant. This move eventually led to the Kelly Power Plant and the beginning of the modernizing of Gainesville and its utilities. Also as mayor, he started the Boys Club on Waldo Road, and he opened a new library on University Avenue, the grand opening for which 600 guests attended, which was a large turnout at the time, considering there were only 30,000 residents in the area. While he was mayor, a new passenger airline terminal was built. Banker and mentor Justice Williams had been so impressed with the way Clark had added on to the store without even closing that he offered to loan him $20,000 to build homes. Clark's first housing development was in the pre-civil rights era, and it was difficult then for African Americans to get loans for mortgages. To get around that, Clark would do contracts for deeds of ownership for the African American community so that they could get into homes as the banks weren't cooperating. Clark recognized early that the black community was just as important a customer base as was the white community. At that time, it was hard for blacks to trust the white business community due to abuses of power that existed throughout the business and community affairs. But members of the African American community believed in Clark just as he believed in them. Clark was truly colorblind when it came to people in his community, his extended family. During this home building period in the 1960s, a young University of Florida professor came to him with his schoolteacher wife who wanted to build their first house. Unfortunately, They couldn't qualify for a loan as women's salary didn't count towards a couple's credit rating during childbearing years. Clark believed in this young couple, so he drove to Jacksonville to the FHA VA offices and pleaded their case. He promised to deliver 3 additional mortgages to mitigate the risk of this loan. It led to the first home of Bob and Kay Bryan. Bob eventually became the president of the University of Florida. At that time, Mr. and Mrs. Tom Coward, a young African-American couple, wanted to buy a home from Clark, and he made the same appeal to the bank for them. But the mortgage officials told Clark they wouldn't provide a black couple a loan. Clark persisted, and the bank finally agreed to the loan if Clark brought the bank 5 additional white loan mortgages. And of course, Clark made it happen. Clark went on to become the founding president of the Gainesville Home Builders Association and developed many significant areas of the Gainesville housing market. He built the Millhopper Shopping Center at the corner of Northwest 16th, where the Publix is today, and residential developments such as Westmoreland Estates on 43rd Street, Sunnybrook, Fernwood, and Palmview Estates. He later sold the shopping center. As the university grew and prospered, students began to have the means to rent apartments rather than live in boarding houses. Thanks to the encouragement of friends, Clark got into the apartment business. He was the first to build apartments on Southwest 16th Avenue. He built the 12-story Lakeshore Towers, one of the first residential high-rises in town, in 1964. After that, Williamsburg and Mount Vernon apartments soon followed. He developed Wind Meadows apartments and a mobile home park. Woodrow Bratcher and his son Bobby, who rode Clark's shoulders when working at the grocery store, worked with his dad to build those apartments. While developing the Millhopper Shopping Center, Clark went to New York City with a map of Gainesville to try and get Woolworth's corporate executives interested in the project. The Woolworth's representatives instead asked Clark about Archer Road for the development. At the time, Archer Road was a dirt airstrip with no I-75 interchange, but it did have access to 34th Street. Incidentally, Clark had become a pilot and learned to fly there. Clark then called Justice Williams, the president of Florida National Bank, regarding the land, and Justice replied, "There's nothing there, but if you're set on it, I'll put you in touch with some potential investors." In 1970, he bought land next to Archer Road. Archer was the main road to the Veterans Administration and Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. The Department of Transportation, the University of Florida, and the community wanted to 4-lane it, but Clark disagreed. He thought it would quickly become obsolete with the rate that UF was growing and would continue to grow. Plus, as fast as the VA and Shands hospitals were growing, a 4-lane road could never handle the traffic. He recommended a 6-lane road. The DOT noted, the state can't afford to purchase the land needed for 6 lanes, as there was a railroad right-of-way on the south side of the street. Clark tried to interest the property owners on Archer in buying the railroad right-of-way with him to help the 6-lane plan go through. They weren't interested. So Clark purchased the railroad right-of-way himself, and the 6-lane road was built, as well as the interchange at I-75 and Archer. It was at this time he was trying to build a shopping center to serve the people of Gainesville, Butler Plaza. Woodrow's son Bobby Bratcher helped him build each phase of the plaza. Many people might not know that prior to buying the Archer Road property, Clark extended a kindness to a kidney transplant patient for free rent at Lakeshore Towers. The man eventually got well, and to repay the kindness, told Clark about a property for sale in Orlando on Highway 436, which ended up becoming the first Butler Plaza. In 1982, Roy Lambert approached Clark about syndicating properties. These two men turned out to be kindred spirits, possessing traits of kindness, integrity, and dignity, with brilliant entrepreneurial minds. In forming the syndication, one of Clark's benchmarks was the fact that a gentleman's agreement was both binding and valid. At one point, Clark was contacted by another syndicator who wanted to buy the property Clark had already promised to Roy as a part of the syndication. When the buyer asked Clark if he had already signed a contract with Roy, Clark said no. In desperation, the buyer offered Clark $1 million over the deal with Roy. Clark responded, "I gave my word to Roy, and we shook hands. I can't take your money." Syndication continued to be a priority in taking care of business partners and investors. Roy has a passion for entrepreneurship and approached the University of Florida in the mid-1990s to create an endowment for his friend, colleague, and business associate, Clark Butler. He wanted a fund that would grow and build a program of entrepreneurship. This fund has now earned over $40 million and brought the world's best businessmen and businesswomen to the University of Florida. It's proven to be a tremendous legacy. Like many entrepreneurs, Clark was not content focusing on one business endeavor. In 1977, with the help of his attorney and friend Bill Andrews and his mentor, banker Justice Williams, he organized Gainesville State Bank, the first of what would be emulated by many community banks in this area. Starting the bank wasn't without complications. The banking regulatory agency in Tallahassee said that he was crazy. However, he begged their approval, indicating that he and the board would make certain that the bank would succeed. They believed and trusted in him, as did another banker and his mentor, Clarence Ayers, who loaned him $100,000 to start. He designed an elegant and beautiful facility with architecture and landscaping that would show quality and send the message that, "I'm here to stay, you can trust me, you can bank here." Gainesville State Bank grew as much as it could without someone special to come and grow the bank. Carl Walls dared to be different. Marketing maverick, he turned banking upside down just as Clark did with his grocery store by offering 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. banking 6 days a week. He offered same-day credit and armored car service. This bank was for the man on the street and the small business person, which is what Clark sorely needed when he first started out. The bank grew to 7 branches. When the bank was sold years later to Compass Bank, it had grown to $200 million under Carl Wall's management. Highly active in the bank, Clark was chairman of the board for 20 years. Clark went on to serve as chairman of Compass Bank's advisory board and enjoyed working with presidents Rafael Bustillo and later Steve Michener for many years. Butler Plaza went from a Publix neighborhood center of 86,000 square feet to the Miracle Mile of a regional shopping and dining center of over 1 million square feet. When it came to negotiating, whether it was with the cooks at the back door or the major anchor tenants, Clark wouldn't sell himself or any project short, as he believed and would say, "There's always going to be another bus." Because of its location and the quality of what he had built, the center attracted the top national and regional restaurant and retail tenants. Due to its success, the heart of Florida continues to experience positive growth and quality of life choices in retail options. This incredible high-traffic, densely populated activity center is adjacent to the University of Florida and within a 2-mile radius of 8 of the major employees in Alachua County. In addition, Gainesville serves as the employment base and commercial center for a 12-county region with a population base of more than 850,000 within a 40-mile radius. Clark was fortunate when his daughter Deborah joined the company in 1984. Working together, they expanded Butler Plaza to over 1 million square feet and created a power center of national prominence. Many entrepreneurs think they can, quote, do it all themselves. The smart ones realize that no one person can do it all. Clark freely credited his daughter and business partner Deborah as being an important contributor in making Butler Plaza into the thriving enterprise that it's become. Clark was asked what he considered to be his greatest achievement. Being in the building business for over 50 years, he felt strongly about the free enterprise system. When the legislature passed a title insurance law in 1991 that would not allow a person to negotiate the cost of title insurance, he filed suit against that law as it mandated exorbitant fees to be charged for securing title insurance. Since title insurance is required to secure a loan for property, this law adversely affected everyone from the individual home buyer to the largest developer. After 6 years of legal battles, the law was ultimately ruled illegal by the Circuit Court of Florida. The 10 title insurance companies appealed the decision, and a year later the law was ruled unconstitutional by the Florida Supreme Court. He credits Bill Andrews and Cynthia Chestnut for their support of his efforts in doing the right thing to benefit everyone. Even with all of his professional successes and hard work, it would appear that business and development was the center of his life. But actually, it was his family. Clark and Mary Catherine had 3 children, Clark Butler Jr., Catherine Ann, and Deborah Jean. Deborah comments that her parents and siblings look like movie stars. Her father, Clark Gable, her mother, a cross between the strength and stature of Katharine Hepburn mixed with the humor and kindness of Debbie Reynolds. Her brother was Elvis Presley. Her sister, Marilyn Monroe, and Deborah, Donald Duck. Clark shared the love of the outdoors with his family. Remember, they honeymooned at Horseshoe. There were many family vacations at Horseshoe and lakes and rivers. Get a look at the drive of this boat. Mary Catherine must be on the bow taking the picture, and look how fast this kid's going. He also involved his children in his residential development. The kids helped him with the promotion at one of the homes where he gave free pony rides. The kids would lead the children around. Clark Jr. Just compare the two Clarks. Look how similar the two look as boys. Both of them were mischievous, had charismatic personalities with strong wills and determination. Just like his dad, Clark Jr. never met a stranger and was forever doing a kindness for someone. He was as comfortable in the backcountry and nature as was his father. He would go out into the woods for 2 weeks at a time and never get lost, just like his dad would do in the Everglades without a map. He could read the stars, the weather, and the sky. At 10 years of age, he could track a deer or a wild hog. Clark Jr. loved fast cars, and had he lived, may have been a professional race car driver. He enlisted in the Marines and was prepared to do his duty when he died at the age of 19. Catherine Ann, or Kathy, inherited her parents' good looks, keen mind, and her father's quick wit and sense of humor. She also inherited his tremendous love of philanthropy and follows the pursuits in Los Angeles, where she currently lives. She also carries on the family tradition of her love of animals. At one time, she had horses that were used in Las Vegas and Orlando themed shows. Kathy has a creative side and pursues her art and theatrical agency work in Southern California. Deborah, like her father, is the youngest of her family. When Deborah was 14, Clark took her to Louisville, Kentucky to the American Saddlebred World's Championship Horse Show. During the ladies' 5-gated class event, Deborah told her dad, "I'm going to win that class one day." In 2004, Deborah won the World's Championship Ladies Amateur 5-gated title. She shared her dad's love of fishing and had an interest in business from a very early age. One of Deborah's earliest recollections of helping the family was being shoved through a window in bunny feet at one of the houses to go and unlock the door at 6 o'clock one morning.
And Mr. Butler is your daughter, Deborah Butler?
Oh, yes. She's my right arm.
Your right arm. Has Deborah been your business partner with you?
Since she got out of college, yeah. In fact, she worked for me before she went to college. She worked when I was building houses out in Westmoreland Estates. I'd take her, and Saturday when I was out, one day particular that I remember that I was out there and I had forgot the keys, and I had a model house that I was getting ready to open up. So she was about 5 or 6 years old at the time. And I found a window that was open and that I could open. I pushed it up, got her and shoved her through the window. She went and got the front door open. So she said, "Well, Daddy, I'm your partner. We're working together." So it was wonderful.
Years later, upon graduating from the American Graduate School of International Management, Clark asked her to come home to work with him. When he called, the company had approximately 90,000 square feet of shopping center space. Today, it's over 1 million. Clark was an avid fisherman all of his life. In fact, he was featured in the newspaper for his fishing skills. As a young man new to the Gainesville area, he could be seen rowing around Noonan's Lake, Tuscaloosa, Levy Prairie, Orange Creek, and Horseshoe, his ancestral home. He had many fishing companions over the years, but in the early 1970s, a group of friends discovered snook fishing in the backcountry of the Everglades. Well, that sealed it. The group called themselves and became known as a Rat Pack. The pack members were Clark, Bob Bratcher, Jim Quincy, Bob Rehberg, Ike Gainey, Gary Johnson, and Sonny Scott. Over time, others joined, but those early fishing years with the Rat Pack were special. Interestingly, one Rat Pack member noted that the genius of Clark's business mind was never mentioned on any of these trips. Clark was just another guy. They were just boys being boys, telling jokes and having fun. In time, the original fishing boat was replaced by the My Queen, which was donated to charity in 2008. Clark's life theme was courage in the broadest sense of the word. This was clear from the day he was born. It was how he lived his life, through the Depression, through the move from Plant City to Gainesville, and all that he did for this community. Philanthropy and helping others was his passion. Clark was always thinking of others and how to be of help. Over the course of his life, Clark gave a lot to the homeless because he was so close to losing his home time and time again as he was building his life and his businesses. Clark's family took people in that would be walking along the street with nothing to eat and would share their dinner with them. His belief and feeling was that could have been us. Plus, it was simply the right thing to do. He was known to say that your integrity is everything. You have to live with yourself at the end of the day. Never compromise your integrity.
And of all the people that I've met with over my time, he is perhaps the most consummate gentleman, always kind and thoughtful, and very respectful in our meetings and relationships. He certainly has left an incredible mark on our community and been, as you've heard from Commissioner Pinkison, a tremendous philanthropic leader as well as an entrepreneur and business leader. I got to thinking about what we could really do that would be fitting to tribute Clark Butler and the contributions that he's made here in Gainesville. And there's really only one honor that the city endows that's higher than a proclamation, and we have, in fact, declared today as Clark Butler Day in the city of Gainesville. But the higher honor, which really, I believe since I've been mayor, Mr. Butler, I've only done this perhaps once or twice before. So it's actually a much more substantial recognition, is I am here to grant you a key to the city of Gainesville.
You gone fishing,
Ah, you know.
but there's a sign upon your door.
Uh-huh.
Gone fishing,
I'm real gone, man.
you ain't working anymore.
Could be.
There's your hoe out in the sun, where you left a row half done. You claim that hoeing ain't no fun.
But I can prove it.
You ain't got no ambition. Gone fishing by a shady, wadey pool.
Shangri-La. Really la.
I'm wishing I could be that kind of fool.
Shall I twist your arm?
I'd say no more work for mine.
Welcome to the club.
On my door I'd hang a sign, gone fishing, instead of just a wishing.